Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life. Guess who's back?
Back again.
Here we are. Here we are. Same time, same channel.
We got a lot of energy going between the two of us right now, so we're in for a treat. I don't even know what the topic is, but I'm sure it's going to be fun.
It's been crazy. I mean, we've been talking for 15 minutes and we're like, maybe we should hit record now.
Yeah.
But you know, that's the fun thing. So I've been doing I use the Mel Robbins technique now. When my alarm goes off at 5, I go to myself, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. I just wake up. There's no snoozing. It just convinces your brain, let's go. And I hate it. Of course you do. But 5 minutes later, I'm up. I start my workout, walk my 3 miles all before work. And the sad thing is, I'm getting up earlier and doing more. And here it is. It's 10 o'clock my time, 9 o'clock your time. I had the tap house afterwards, and I have all this energy. It's amazing. You forget when you push yourself how much energy you really have if you're eating well and doing the right things too.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've been waking up lately and I'll get up at like 5 to go to the gym and I'll snooze till 5:05. And at the end of the day, like, what is that doing for me? Like,
There's
I'm not
nothing
going to feel better. I'm just going to be late. So I just think it's a funny concept and I fall victim to it too. It's just funny.
all the time, but if you think about it, it's torture. That's why for our listeners, if you Google Mel Robbins, she's incredible. She has a lot of motivational advice and does a lot in the business world with, executives. But her 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I mean, it's amazing. You wake up and your body knows, your mind knows it's time to wake up, but your body's like, nope, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And your body wins because it's laying there. But if
Can you
your
start
mind,
from 10 or does it have to be 5?
well, you can start from 3 if you want, if you're a real go-getter.
Yeah.
I think if I started from 10, I'd fall asleep by the time I got back to 1. So,
Yeah, honestly.
but
Same.
anyways, a lot of good things happen. And I mean, yeah, it's fun when we have a lot going on, and I'm glad we're staying committed to this because I'm getting a lot of good feedback. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'm doing it because I get to talk to my daughter once a week. But
Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun when you realize you're making a difference and people are listening. So, you ready for tonight's topic?
Yeah.
This is an oldie but a goodie. Communication, but I want to really break it down, nonverbal versus verbal. I used to
Mm.
think I used to think nonverbal is what people had the most problem with, but anymore with phones, I think it's all communication. I think it's both verbal and nonverbal. So you start where you want to start, and I'll fill in along the way.
I'm going to start with sports tonight because that's right where my mind went to first with the nonverbal side. So, my favorite thing, I'm going to go to softball. My favorite thing as a hitter is when I saw the pitcher throw a ball or a girl that was up before me got a hit and she just out loud and hung her head. Like, I know I got you now. Like, I got a leg up on you and you didn't even say anything. I just know by your body language that something's going on internal for you that's going to be a leg up for me. And I think in sports, that is a huge deal, no matter what sport it is you're playing, right? It could be basketball, soccer, golf, like anything. You can easily tell when someone is in their head, when someone is struggling, or when someone's defeated. So that's kind of where my mind went to right away.
That's a great point. Listen, there's no guarantees, and it's hard enough. Like in the Super Bowl, both teams have great communication, great nonverbal communication, right? But if if you don't do it well, you're definitely going to lose. If you do it well, you have a better chance to succeed, but nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah.
And and as a coach, I'm I've noticed this be my third year coaching high school softball, not all the travel stuff.
Mhm.
I noticed it my first year with umpires with calls, and I make those odd nonverbal things in the dugout, and your team picks up on that.
Yeah.
And now I've opened the door for more excuses. And when you can't control certain variables, there's no sense showing you're beat by it. You need to just push forward and control what you can control.
Well, and I think when you're part of a team too, like if you're someone people look to, the body language you show is now contagious, right? Like, let's say you're one of the strongest players on the team and you're sulking your head after you strike out, and another girl might be like, whoa, well, if she's struggling, like I'm not confident anymore going up there. So I feel like in teams especially, it's not even like I've heard people say fake it till you make it. It's not even that. I feel like it's almost just an attitude adjustment. Like you got to keep the perspective of
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm gonna get 4 more bats today. It's not that deep. This is the first inning, and we're gonna move on from it. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think sometimes that's hard to understand. And I feel like body language is a result of short-term emotion when it needs to be like you need to think about the bigger picture and keep perspective too.
Yes. And sticking with at bats in softball, every at bat statistically is unrelated, right? Just if you get out twice and you're a 300 hitter, it doesn't mean the next time you get a hit. But they're related 100% if you take negative energy to the next at bat, or if you take positive energy to the next at bat. So if something bad happens, you have to shake it as soon as possible. It doesn't mean you can't have a minute. I know my favorite thing with you is when I was watching you. It was different when you were a kid, but in college, I'd see after the game as a parent, I'm like, hey, sorry about this. And you're just like, Dad, I need a minute. And you're a very positive person. But that was our cue of like, listen, I understand what you're saying, but I still just need my minute right now. And that's the same thing anytime you compete. But when you need a minute, you can still hold your head high and not showcase negative nonverbal communication.
100%. I think another big one that's coming to my mind is if your team in any sport is winning a big game, but you're not having personal success and you have bad body language, that is a huge indicator of being a little bit selfish, right? If my team's winning, but I got pulled out of the game, or I didn't start, or I'm 0 for 3, and my body language looked like if someone looked at the game and looked at me and were like, "Ooh, that team must be losing." I think that's a huge problem.
That's probably one of the biggest red flags they could manufacture, right?
Yeah.
If
Wave the
there
red
was
flag.
if there was a if you had a red flag over your head, like from little to big, based on your body language, if you're not happy for your team and your teammates, of course you're going to be upset with yourself or you have standards. But if you're not happy in the moment, my biggest pride and joy, or the thing I'm most proud of, I should say, was in college when I was playing golf and in my prime. If people just show up on the ninth hole and see me coming down the fairway, they didn't know if I was having a great round or a bad round. Because
Mhm.
I'm looking, when it's not my turn, I'm enjoying the sky and the landscaping and might be whistling, quietly. And you have to be steady and you have to be stoic almost with the process because it's the ups and downs are going to happen. And if you
Yeah.
can't find a way to stay stable, and of course, emotion, like you said, people get fired up all the time or angry, but it has to be temporary, that real temporary, depending on the sport, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute. But
You got to be a goldfish, like Ted Lasso says.
yes, yeah.
I
What 3 second memory for a goldfish is
I
that?
think so.
Which I
Yeah.
don't know how they figure that out, but anyways, that's
I
their
mean,
podcast.
I think too. So a little bit about my story in college. I wasn't a starter for my first 3 years. And the thing is, like, when that first pitch gets thrown or we step on the field, I I take part in my role as best as I can. At that point, it's not about me. It's not about me not starting. It's about my team winning. And I think sometimes we individualize everything based on like what we're feeling, when at the end of the day, like, okay, that's my role for the game. I'm going to do the best I can with it. And then after the game, I'm going to work harder to change the situation I'm not happy about. But during the game, I'm going to give that role the best I got 100% because it's not about me, it's about my team at that point as soon as that game starts.
Yeah. And doing that I don't know what anybody's current status is in sport, but you have a better chance to play someday. You have a better chance to start someday. You have a better chance of getting recruited someday if you do all those things.
Yeah.
But if you don't do those things, I can't even begin to tell people the damage is intangible because it's hard to measure, right? You can measure statistics, good and bad. But I think if we had a panel of 100 coaches on this podcast, which would be a really cool Zoom with all the different squares,
Yeah.
the the nonverbal body language is a game changer.
Yeah. And I think it's been humbling as a coach too, because think about it, like your girls are on the field and you know this is a coach. They do something good or they make an error. Where do they look
Oh,
sometimes?
well, their parents first a
Their
lot.
parents, but then right at you.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So if they do something bad, I'm not mad at them. Like I know how they're trying. Will I be frustrated? Sometimes, depending on what it was. But they look at me and I'm trying to be that rock for them. Like I'm like, hey, we got this. So as a coach too, like all coaches listening out there, you got to control your body language just as much, if not more, than you expect your players to.
It's funny when I mean it's a whole we could do a whole podcast on how I got into coaching high school volleyball for 8 years. But there's so many fast-paced points, right? I mean, a point could last 2 seconds or 30 seconds, but it got to the point every time a mistake happened, I saw the player looking over at the bench at me. And so one day in practice, we literally practice it. If you look over at me, I'm subbing you out in practice when we were scrimmaging. And it got to the point a game would happen and it could be a close game. And they'd make a mistake. I just yelled, don't do it. And then they wouldn't look at me. And it sounds crazy, but they have to understand I'm not judging them for that one error. Now, if they don't look at me and they don't have effort, that's something different. Like if
Yeah.
you're trying to make a mistake, you don't hopefully I have good body language, but it doesn't even matter. Just don't look at me. But I
Mhm.
think athletes are so conditioned because if you're on a team, there's a side of you, you really want to be a people pleaser and you want to please your teammates and your coaches. And I think sometimes those expectations is why the head hangs and things go wrong. But just keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. You're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah.
Adjust.
And that's the thing. Like it's all within reason. If it's a close game and you make an error, I'm not saying you should be smiling like a bobblehead. That's
Right.
probably not the right
Yes.
reaction. You can hang your head for a minute and be like, dang, like, but you gotta have some sort of reset for yourself. Like I remember we'd talk about that in college. Like you have to have some sort of reset, whether it's something written on my glove, whether it's okay, I'm gonna rub the dirt and throw it, and that's my way of like throwing away my anger right now. I gotta say something to myself. And everyone has to figure out what that is and it has to actually work because
Yes.
I'm not the scariest things, but the hardest thing to cope with is like if I see one of my teammates during a game and their body language is just so far gone, like they're kind of scary to me at that. Like I don't even know how to talk to them. And we've all had someone like that. And it creates this really, really weird dynamic within your team. And what always happens, guess who's in a tough situation when the game ends up on the line 1 hour later? That same girl whose body language was super bad that no one felt like they could approach or talk to an hour ago. And it's just super funny how the game works like that. But I think you got to remember when you have bad body language like that, you're creating like a tense environment for your team, and people feel like almost nervous around you. Like I'm sure have you seen that in your teams too? Like when a girl goes so far that it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, it really causes like almost a team anxiety.
Mhm.
And that's it's a great segue because we've been talking about nonverbal communication, but
Yeah.
the nonverbal communication, I think you just showcased how it really affects verbal communication because no one at that point is going to say, "Come on, Chloe, it's okay, you can do it." Like you can't even approach people.
Yeah.
But let's start moving into verbal communication. Like the nonverbal sometimes can even be swept under the rug, right?
Yeah.
But even though everybody says it, verbal communication, I feel, has more immediate consequences.
Yeah, I think the tough part about verbal is if you say something when your emotions are heightened, and it can be any emotion, there's a good chance you might regret it later. Like, you have to be very careful about what you're saying when your emotions are at 100%. And back to your point earlier, and I would use this often, like, even in the dugout after I struck out, I'd go back in, someone say something, be like, I'm fine, I just need a minute, like I'll be good. But that was my way of like, hey, I might say something I don't want to say right now, and it's not your fault. This is totally on me. But that's my verbal communication to you of like, just need a sec. I'll be good. By the time we go back out onto the field, I'll be completely reset. I just need a second. And that verbal communication, right? Instead, if I didn't say that, people might have kept trying to approach me and console me. And that would have just made me more mad and more mad and more mad. So you have to use your verbal communication there too.
So to help teams out, and I think we've been okay at this, and not we never really packaged it like we just kind of did until now. If someone has a moment, you can tell they're down, nonverbal, and you go up to talk to them. If that person just says, "I need a minute," that tells you to step back for a minute. But doesn't that also hold that player accountable that take your minute and now it's time to get over it? So I
Yeah.
think I don't see how that's not a win-win. Instead of them going in the side corner for half an inning and then still sulking when they go back out on the field, and then somebody's like, come on, let's go. And then they snap at them and now it's spiral.
Yes, I agree. And the other thing is, if someone tells you they need a minute, give it to them. There's a lot of fixers out there who are like,
Yeah.
no, they're just saying that they need it. Nope, they might actually need a minute. But if you notice that it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then we can go up to them again and kind of change it. And something that kind of worked for me was like if a girl was sulking and had her head down, like the best way to approach it is not in front of five other people. You're being selfish. Stop. Why are you acting like
Yes. That's like telling somebody to calm down when they're mad.
right? The better approach in my mind is when you go back out on the field, run next to them, we're like, hey, we need you right now. I need you to shake whatever you got going on. Like one on one, tell them, I need you to act better. I need you to act different. Because sometimes I think you're so involved with yourself, you don't even recognize that other people are noticing how you're acting.
Right. And everybody really wants the same thing, to be successful as an individual and as a team. But so the intent's there when you're upset, like it's because it means so much. But the communication between teammates is never more important. So I like that I need a minute. I remember you telling me something that you used in college where if something happened, you'd tell somebody, don't go red.
Yeah. So, and I still use this terminology with the girls I coach. So, any sport you're playing, and this could be in life, right? We're going to use like a stoplight analogy. So, green, everything's going good. I'm on top of the world. Nothing can bring me down. That's your green zone. Yellow's kind of like, minor setback. I'm doing okay. Whatever. I'll get out of it. It's just temporary. Red is like, do not speak to me. I need a minute. I'm dealing with something. I don't want to talk to anyone. So those are kind of the three phases. And if you think about that in athletics, most of the time on a given day, when you show up to practice, you're going to be green or yellow, right? Like maybe you've had a bad day so far, so you're yellow. But if not, it's like, whoa, practice time, I'm green, right? I'm going to use softball as an example. Let's say game starts, I'm in the green. All right, first pitch of the game, ground ball right through my legs. I'm yellow now. Like that was not good. I'm yellow, but it's all right. I'm going to come back. Now my next at bat, strikeout. Okay, maybe I'm still yellow. Next inning, another error. Now I'm red. Like I am in my head, and red is like, hey, I'm down bad right now. Like I'm stuck somewhere that I can't get out of. I need help to get out of it. And the terminology is kind of like, hey, when you're in a game, you can be yellow, but you cannot go red. And if you're gonna be red, you gotta be there for like 30 seconds or less. So to me, the yellow is like, I need a minute. The red is I'm pouting for 4 innings because I'm making this about me and the personal failures that I'm having.
I love all this. And I'm going to ask this question and move forward a little, and we can come back and revisit this. So it happens. Teams get walked off against, right? Girls strike out to lose a game or make an error, whatever. What do you say at that point to a player? Because if you lose a game because of a play you made, it's not that one play that makes you lose, right? We all know that.
Yeah.
But it's common. I think it's okay. A player's going to be red or need a minute after that, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you say as a teammate? Because I think this is where things heighten sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I've had instances like that both ways. And I think the first thing that I always always do to my teammates is go up and be right away, be like, it's not on you. It's all of us. I was 1 for 3 that game and had an error. I could have done better. We all could have done better. And right away, our whole team is like, we could have done better. That is not your fault. And I think it's important for that person to hear that. And the second thing is, and I've told my team this when we lose tough games, I'm like, let it hurt for a minute. Let it hurt. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it's okay. Like, it's going to be okay. But in the huddle, 5 minutes after the game ended on a walk-off hit, I'm not going to be like, really good try, guys, because they don't want to hear that. So I'm just going to say, let it hurt, feel it tonight, but when you wake up tomorrow, let it go and move on. Like you just need time at that point for any sport. No one wants to hear after the game, well, you did good. I thought you played well when your team just lost on a buzzer beater.
What I feel, I mean, I've always learned whether I'm at a funeral or a calling hours or a team's lost. I mean, the different aspects of life, but no, but my
Yeah.
point is that your mom, my wife, Stacy, always said the less you say in those situations to the people that are hurting, the better. A hug, a look, uh, we could have done better. A quick statement and done. And I know when we've lost tough games in high school, we have, go out to left field or right field. That's the thing and talk, right? I take my time getting out there and I talk about just that. This hurts. We're not going to say much right now. We could all reflect on what we could have done better as a team to not be in that situation. But let's come back tomorrow and use this. Let's turn this negative feeling into something positive to work harder. And then I just leave and I let the players finish the huddle. I think too many people start over talking then.
Yep. Yep.
And there's just nothing and that's why I use the funeral example, because there's nothing you can say to those people to make them feel better. And in sports, when you lose a big game, there's nothing you can say, but you
Yeah.
just have to let them know you care.
And I 100% agree. And I like that analogy. And here's the other thing. If you want to be a good teammate, if you notice someone on your team had a super rough game or they gave up a walk-off hit, you don't need to say anything in the moment. Text them later that night at 10 p.m. when they're laying alone thinking about it. That's when they need you to say something, right?
Yes.
They're laying alone now thinking about all the stuff that they could have done better. That's when they need something from you. And I think, we go home and we're so wrapped up in ourselves that we're not necessarily thinking about that. And that goes for life too, right? You see someone have a rough day, when are they going to be alone with their thoughts and probably need some advice? So I think that's just something super important to keep in mind too.
Well, and think about it. How you handle those situations can make or break a team. And if you send that text late at night, that person may come with energy like no other the next day at practice, or may not feel the pressure in that situation next time, or knows just it's nice to be part of a family where people have your back. And at some point to win, whether it's a league title or a state championship or a conference or whatever, you have to be able to trust each other in tough situations. And if you can't trust your teammates or rely on your teammates when things are bad, it's sure not going to happen when things are pressure filled and you're not going to win because of it. So
Yeah.
these moments almost have to happen, right?
Yeah.
Nobody just flies through a season.
No. And I think going back to body language too, when you're around your teammates every day, you learn people's body language really,
Yeah.
really well. Like the slightest thing. But one thing we haven't talked about yet is let's say, we're at practice and I'm gonna pretend we're at a practice together and we're on a team together. Wouldn't that be fun?
Dream come true.
Let's say yeah, I know your body language really well, right? Let's say you just show up to practice and I can tell like something's weird. Like I can tell something's going on. You're just like not super communicative. Something's happened. Again, the approach probably isn't in front of everyone to be like, what's happening with you right now? Instead, right after practice, I could be like, hey, you seemed a little off today. Like, I just want to check on you. Are you all right? Because sometimes I almost feel like the body language is done on purpose by people to
Yes.
get the attention from some, like there's almost always a reason in those instances.
Yeah, and I mean, I've used various methods. I told you, I think one in a past episode, I literally would have a solo cup in the dugout or the court. And if someone comes that way, I'm like, listen, go empty it. We'll talk after practice. Because why compound it?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
problem's going to be there afterwards. And if you, it might be a release to just let go of it for a little bit. And those symbolic gestures. Now, it doesn't have to be a cup. Like the point is, it's okay to even address it with somebody and say, listen, I can tell something's on your mind. We know each other real well. Let's talk after practice, but let's go have a kick-ass practice right now.
Yeah. Well, I always laugh at the people too, like if they just walk in somewhere and they're like, oh, and they just keep doing that. I'm like, what's wrong? They're like, nothing. I'm like, okay, well, obviously something's happening
Yeah.
happening right now. You're sign like I just think that's funny too.
It's time, place, manner. Like it's not the time, the place, or the manner for that. You're here. Let's not compound it. And really, that's what good body language compounds and bad body language compounds, and good verbal communication compounds and bad compounds. Like let's nip it in the butt and move on, but let's address it. And that's my little last topic for the night with this communication is at the end of the day, whether someone's bad or good, they have to be held accountable. Like it's okay to hold someone accountable if they've showcased good nonverbal or verbal communication, but it's even more important to hold someone accountable when they're not and be consistent.
Yeah, I mean, going back to, I know I said like you can walk into a practice and be yellow on that scale because the sport isn't your life. Like you've had a whole day before practice, things could have gone wrong, but it's almost better. And I've done this before to walk in and be like, guys, it's been a crap day. Like I need a pick me up right now. Like literally just say that. I'm like, whoo, today has really put me through the ringer. Like I need to have a good practice right now instead of walking in like head down, sulking, being kind of that, creating that little tension for you and your team. I almost just speak it into existence. So you don't always have to do that, but that was just something that kind of worked for me.
Well, so it's you have to take accountability yourself. Like
Yeah.
students will come into my class, they're like, "Whew, it's been a day," and I'll respond, "And I'm so glad I'm part of it right now."
Yeah.
Like let's turn it. Of course, we've had episodes and talked that when you have part of a bad day, it's just part of a bad day. Don't let it turn into your whole day. And it's hard. It's emotional intelligence. It's discipline. It's knowing it's not your whole identity. And all this stuff ties in together, but it starts with how you carry yourself and what you say. But
Yeah.
most importantly, it helps if you have a team that can identify this too, and coaches.
100%.
So great talk. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, I think we covered a lot tonight. I liked this topic, so it was
I
awesome.
I could talk about this stuff all day. I mean, and depending on the sport, the recovery times, golf's the worst. You hit a bad shot, you literally have 5 minutes before you hit your next shot. If you
Yeah.
strike out in softball, you might have a half hour before you get another chance to hit, but you have a chance to make a play somewhere else. Where basketball and hockey and volleyball, you have a chance to recover 5 seconds later sometimes.
Yeah. Well, golf
And
is tough too because you got to physically walk to your bad ball you just hit.
yeah, and you know what? You hit a bad shot and you like if I do something bad in softball, like if I strike out, my teammate might hit a home run next time. If I hit a bad shot in golf, I'm looking in the woods for the ball. I don't get to go to where my teammate hit the shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's all relative to the sport. It's all the stuff we talked about. It's the same. I'm just saying sometimes when you need a minute, you have more minutes in certain sports, but you whatever that minute is, you have to snap out of it.
Yeah. No, this has been great. And we've got a lot of good guests lined up for you that we're very excited about. So stay tuned over the next few weeks. And as always, let us know if there's a topic you want to hear about too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Allie.